Good morning, crocheters. I had such an enjoyable time last night doing the live chat with you guys, and I really want to say thank you for everyone who jumped on, and even those people who may have missed it but have gone through and commented on the topics that were discussed later in the comment section. It's been so fun. I don't know, after that live, I went and I hung out with my family, and I just felt so so happy. I don't know. You guys are my tribe, and I love hanging out with you. So I'm excited to do it again, to have that live, do another live next Tuesday at 7 o'clock as well. My plan is that I will just do this for the month of May as part of the Vlog-A-Day May. Who knows? We might just do this forever though. Maybe it'll become a thing where we do Tuesdays. We'll see. I mean, we've only done one, so it might be a little early to say, yes, we're doing this all the time, but I really enjoyed it. So I want to say thank you. There were two things that came up in the discussion last night that I'd like to talk about today. Number one being how kind of my crocheting has changed over the years. So I think this is being brought up because a couple people have just found my channel, and they're trying to do the Snowy Owl crochet along, which is a tutorial I did back when I crocheted the wrong way. So let me tell you a little bit about that. So I used to crochet under and then over. And just saying that probably doesn't make a lot of sense, so I'm going to flip around and I'm going to show you. All right. So here's my crocheting. So what I would do is, for your basic single crochet, you insert your hook through the next stitch, which when you do under and then over, they're really, really tight. So you yarn over like so. You pull through, and then normally you're supposed to yarn over again and pull through. But what I did was I yarned under. So I would pull it right here and it would go like this. And so the problem with that being that because you're pulling so much less yarn, when you wrap around like this, you have all of this yarn that is going into the stitch. And when you yarn under, you have this much yarn going into the stitch. And so it makes for a really, really tight gauge naturally. And because I was getting such a tight gauge, I was able to use an 11.5 millimeter hook and achieve the same gauge that I do now using an 8 mil. So the crocheting was really, really tight. And because you are using such a big hook to get such a tight gauge, even though you have a tight gauge, you still have kind of these holes where you've been forcing such a huge hook through. So that is a problem. And when I first got started, I thought, well, I developed kind of bad habits because I had, been largely self-taught when it came to crocheting. And so I didn't think of it as a bad habit. I just thought of it as like, oh, this is just how I crochet. Like, it's not that big of a deal. I do it this way. Other people do it, other ways, like not the end of the world. And, it wasn't until I started seeing that people were trying to follow my patterns, people who crocheted yarn over, and the gauge was like ridiculously loose compared to mine. And they were really struggling. And I just had the realization, like, the way I'm doing this is not helping. Like, this is not being a service to the people that I want to, give service to. I'm making their lives harder, and what I want to do is give people the gift of something that they want to make. So I guess in comparison, sorry if you guys can hear that in the background. In comparison, this is another piece of crocheting I've been working on. This one I'm using the 8 millimeter hook. I've just been doing my normal crocheting in it. And you insert the hook, you yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. I mean, and the nice thing about this is that it's so much, it's so much easier to use a nice, you know, a small head of your hook to be making the stitches. You know, I don't have that sort of like gapping that this one does by trying to force the, yeah, like, you know, by forcing that big head through. So that is really like kind of what has changed in my crocheting, in how I hold things and hook sizes and whatnot. I mean, and even the 11.5 honestly is a step down from what I used to do. I don't have that hook with me right now, but let me grab the, you guys saw this one last night. But this guy was made using a 15.75 millimeter hook. I mean, so like, yeah, there are kind of gaps in it, but I was using a huge hook for, you know, the size that it is. And I've learned a lot since these days. So yeah, for those who are doing the snowy owl, that really is the difference. It's just the yarn over versus yarn under. I highly suggest yarning over. It makes for a better finished product. You know, part of the journey, part of the learning. So that is that. And then the second thing that was brought up, we were talking last night about like my master list of animals that I have. And I was getting lots of more ideas and suggestions, and it was so fun. I really, really enjoyed it. And someone brought up an ostrich as something I could make. And it reminded me I wanted to tell you guys another story. I know I've got so many of them. But it does apply to crocheting amigurumi a little bit. I was thinking the other day, I tend to be pretty introspective, and so I was wondering to myself, like, why do I crochet animals? You know, like, I could crochet clothes, I could crochet dolls, I could crochet blankets, I could make pillows, I could, you know, like, there's so many things that you can do with crocheting. Why is it that I've chosen animals? And I don't know that this is like an exact, like, you know, A plus B equals C. But I did grow up with animals, and I grew up with cows, goats, chickens, and a dog. Guess what I haven't made yet? Cow, goat, chicken, or dog. And so that was also my thought. Was like, okay, you grew up with those things, but you haven't made those. So like, why not? And then I had this, you know, my follow-up thought to that was, maybe it was Uncle Dan's house. So Uncle Dan, you know, is very, very interesting character. Lives? I don't know where he lives right now. Anyway, when I was growing up, I was really close with my cousins who are about my same age. They lived roughly an hour away. And their dad, my Uncle Dan, was going through a couple year phase where he had a petting zoo. And he had, oh man, he had so many animals. He had a llama. He had 2 llamas. He had Jordan and Wimpy. He had 2 emus, Sweet and Sour. He had an ostrich. I don't know what its name was. He had potbelly pigs. He had a skunk. He had a wolf. He had goats, but they were less of like, you know, part of the petting zoo. He had ponies. He had horses. And so like I loved, yeah, they had rabbits. See, what else did they have on my, they didn't have a panda. Yeah, they had lots of pigs. Anyway, so like I grew up like when you're little, and I did grow up on like a 1 acre plot of land, which is a lot more than quite a few people get to live on. But Uncle Dan had like 10 to 15 acres. And it was just like you could run, you could do all sorts of things. They had a pond. You could take the rowboat out in and, you know, splash around. They had just like all sorts of stuff. And then all of these crazy animals there as well. And, you know, like my older sister and my younger brother, we lined up pretty well with my Uncle Dan's kids. And so we always wanted to go play with our cousins, and our cousins had this like 15-acre zoo of like the coolest stuff. And so we always wanted to go over there, and we always wanted to play. And we like I spent a lot of time there. You know, for a couple years it was like every weekend we were badgering our parents, like, please, please let us go play at our cousin's house, please. And so, like I said, I don't know that like A plus B equals C. In this scenario, like I grew up around animals and Uncle Dan had awesome animals, so now I make animals. But I do think that there's something there. You know, I think that there is, you know, a little something of like that nostalgia of childhood and like being around these kind of exotic. Oh, he had deer. I forgot he had deer. He had a Russian deer. She was really interesting. I'm sorry. You know, so like being around these kind of interesting and exotic animals, and, you know, things that like most like 10-year-olds can't say, like, my uncle has a skunk, but mine did, you know, or like my uncle has an ostrich and mine did. And so like that was a really cool part about growing up. And so I think that's kind of one of the pieces of the puzzle of why I make animals, you know, why amigurumi really speaks to me. I do think the other part, or at least one of the other pieces of that puzzle, is like the Bernat blanket yarn. When I look at it, I see like my crochet animals. I don't see blankets. And in fact, sometimes it's a little silly, but sometimes when I see a blanket that's been made out of Bernat blanket yarn, I'm like, man, you could have crocheted an animal. That would have been so much more fun. But then again, I'm just not good at doing blankets. So that's the direction I tend to steer. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you guys. Tell me, did you guys have any cool animals around you when you were growing up? I'd love to hear about it, and I love to chat with you. So anyway, I will talk to you guys in the comments. In the meantime, take care, and I'll see you tomorrow.